You're going to hear a conversation between an agent and Scott. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now listen to the tape and answer the questions.
Howdy, what can I do for you?
I'm here to ship some things back to China.
Okay, we can do that. Shipping things back, eh? Have you lived there before?
Yeah, I lived there for 3 years and came back 2 years ago. Now I'm going back to start my own business.
Really? Did you ship things with us last time?
No, I used a Chinese shipping agency.
Well, I'll just let you know that rates have changed recently. So I don't know if they'll be comparable to what you paid before.
It doesn't matter to me. My company's paying for it.
Aha, then it's nothing off your skin, right? Okay, I'll need your name and where you need to go to pick up the items to be shipped.
My name is Scott Linder, Linder, and I live in upstate New York, Saratoga Springs.
Oh, sure, I know that place. I go to the races there. Great town. What's the zip there again?
770425. And the street address is 412 West Lake Road.
770425 Westlake, got it. And how big of a container are you going to be looking for?
Well, I didn't have a container last time, and I don't think I'll need one this time. I think that I'll have about 6 cubic meters.
We can get a subsection of a container then.
How big is that?
It's 2 meters wide and 3 meters long.
2 meters high, right?
Yes, sir.
Now look at questions 6 to 10. As the talk continues, answer questions 6 to 10.
And for customs, I need to know what sort of items will you be shipping?
Mostly furniture. But we'll also have quite a few boxes of books too.
Any clothing?
Nope, but we'll have some bicycles and wood that we use for a loft bed.
Be careful with those bicycles. I hear bicycle theft is a big problem in China.
Not if you know how to secure your bikes and where to store them.
Well, good luck. How valuable do you want me to list the entire shipment as being?
Let's say about $3,500.
Great. Now you'll also have to go over to the customs department to check with them about shipping the wood over to China. I know there are concerns about termites, bugs, etc.
No problem. It's the same wood I brought over from China last time.
Then you should be okay. It's just a formality. And last of all, where would you like the shipment to be delivered?
Well, I will live in Beijing, but let's ship it to Tianjin. My company will pick it up there.
That's all right then. Have a nice trip.
Thanks for your help.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You will hear 2 flatmates, Tom and Richard, talking about their new flatmate who has just moved in the week before.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16.
Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
Hi, Richard. I'm glad I caught you here. Can I just talk to you about something? Our new flatmate, Anders, is not quite what I had hoped. I was wondering if you shared my concerns about some of his behaviour.
Yes, Tom, I know what you mean, but we can't be entirely negative. He has good points. I mean, at least he's quiet. He doesn't play loud music all night or bother others or turn his TV up, disturbing everyone.
Sure, he's quiet, but remember our last flatmate? He'd say hi to you and smile and treat everyone politely. In comparison, this new guy is very impolite. He just grunts in reply and sometimes ignores me altogether.
I guess that's just his way. You know, just his character. I don't think he realises he's being impolite, and it shouldn't matter to us too much. We can just ignore him too and quietly live our own lives.
But his friends are hard to ignore when they visit.
I know what you mean, but how often does that happen? I rarely see them, maybe once or twice a month. If they came more often, it might be a problem, but as it is, such rare visits don't matter so much. Wouldn't you say so?
Well, I'm not sure, since it's very obvious when they're here because of all the cigarette smoke in the house. It stinks up the place, and you know we don't allow smoking on the premises.
Well, I've never seen them doing this. Maybe they do it outside. Perhaps we can talk to Anders about it. Always remember, though, in one respect, he's a good tenant, and it's the most important aspect. The previous flatmate would always pay the rent late.
I know what you're going to say. This guy pays promptly. But there's more to being a good tenant than prompt payment. I mean, you need to turn off the TV, clean up your dishes, dress respectably, be polite, and so on. I guess what I'm saying is that basically you need to cooperate with the others, and this new guy fails significantly in this respect.
OK, I suppose you have a point there.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
I tell you what, Tom, why don't we talk to our new flatmate, Anders, about these issues? If we throw him out, we'll have to go to all the trouble of finding another flatmate, who might not necessarily be much better. So, let's give the current guy a chance. Here, I've got a piece of paper, so let's make a short list of issues to discuss with him. Get it out into the open.
Sure, we'll give him one more chance. So, write communication. And let's tell him to...
Well, we can't change a person's personality overnight. So why don't we have a weekly tenants meeting and we can just ask him to attend. That way we can get to know him better. I'll write attend meeting and we can take it from there.
OK, but we have to tell him about his friends. They can't just do whatever they want. Write a heading friends and then write don't smoke anywhere, inside or outside.
Well, instead of being so direct and possibly causing offence, I'll just write follow rules and verbally mention the rules. TV off by 10 p.m, no loud music or bad behaviour, including smoking.
OK, do that, but I still think we need to specifically mention that last issue. You know how I can't stand the habit. So I'd like this to be another and separate point. Cigarettes, strictly forbidden. And it's important to include the strictly here. We can't pussyfoot around too much. Sometimes directness is necessary.
OK, I'll write that. Forbidden. OK. And what about cleaning duties? Anders is a little too relaxed about that. Dishes are sometimes not washed, dirty teacups are left around the place, and so on.
So, write, must do better.
Yeah, again, Tom, he might take that personally and it could cause a scene. I'd rather be general. I'll write must be done and I'll tell him that that's for everyone, not just him. OK?
OK, as long as he gets the message.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You will hear a conversation between Helen and her tutor.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Come in. Ah, it's you, Helen. What can I do for you?
Well, it's about that essay on non-verbal communication. I'd like a bit of advice, if that's all right.
By all means. That's what I'm here for. How can I help you?
It's about that survey you asked us to carry out about body language.
Oh, yes. I asked you to investigate what sort of touching is permissible between friends of the same sex and friends of the opposite sex.
That's it. And then you wanted us to go on to compare the answers we obtained from people from our own culture with the answers of people from other cultures.
Well, that shouldn't be too difficult. There are students here from dozens of cultures, including Asia and the Middle East. Go and ask them.
That's the problem. I'm not sure how to word the questions.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Go and ask them.
That's the problem. I'm not sure how to word the questions. I think I've got far too many. People don't want to be bothered answering them all.
Is that the list of questions you have with you? Let's have a look. I see. Your basic idea is fine. You've got a checklist of the parts of the body we mostly use to touch people with, and a checklist of the parts of other people's bodies that we usually touch. But you don't have to go right through the list asking a separate question about each item. You can make your questionnaire much shorter if you ask open questions.
Open questions? What are they?
Sometimes we call them WH questions. What, when, where. Those are examples.
Oh, I see. Yes, we learned about them in grammar. I hadn't realised how useful they turn out to be. I could just ask one open question about each subject and tick the answers I receive.
That's right. Now, let's have a look at the list of parts of the body you're going to ask about. I see. You've got the head, arm and hand, and, oh, it's over the page, the back, leg and foot. What about the shoulder and the thigh? They're important areas, and there are some others you should include too.
Oh, yes, of course. I was in a rush and forgot those. What about asking people how they feel about being touched? Surely, it's hard for people to put that sort of feeling into words.
Yes, you're right. That's why it's essential to work out a rating scale for each response.
Can you tell me a bit about how to use rating scales?
Well, there's no way to measure how strongly a person feels about something, of course. All we can go on is what they report about their feelings. So what we do is offering them choices of ways to express how they feel. Very strongly, strongly, or not at all. That would be an example of a rating scale. In this case, as your survey is only a small trial sample, I suggest you use that 3-point rating scale I've just described. Very strongly, strongly, or not at all. That'll be enough to enable you to draw some broad conclusions. You may go on to refine your survey later if you decide to specialise in the study of non-verbal aspects of behaviour.
Thank you. I'm much clearer now. Could I ask you one last question? I'm afraid I've got a brain like a sieve, but I just can't remember the technical term you told us for the study of touch. It sounded like happy, but of course it isn't.
Oh, you mean haptics. Haptics.
Of course, haptics.
That's it. Happy to be of service.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Last week we looked at some of the features of modern houses, and today we're going to turn the clock back and look at traditional house design. I've chosen to start with Samoa, which is part of a group of Polynesian islands in the South Pacific Sea, because the influence of culture and weather on house design is quite clear there. So let's have a look at, first of all, at the overall design of a traditional Samoan house. Now, these days, houses in Samoa have become more modern and are usually rectangular. But traditional designs were round, or sometimes they were oval in shape. Here's a picture. This traditional style is still used, often for guest houses or meeting houses, and most Samoan villages have at least one of these buildings. As you can see, there are no walls, so the air circulates freely around the house. Samoa is a place that experiences high temperatures, but the open design of the house also reflects the openness of Samoan society. If the occupants want shelter, there are several blinds made of coconut leaves that can be lowered during rainy or windy weather. Or indeed, the blinds can also be pulled down if people want some privacy. The foundations of the house, that's the part beneath the floor, are raised slightly. In the past, the height was linked to the importance of the occupants, which we'll talk about another time. However, the floor of the house was usually covered with river stones. Today, we have a range of methods for balancing the temperature inside a building, but the stones on the floor of a Samoan home are ideal for cooling the building on hot days. Now, let's have a close look at the roof. This, as you can see in the picture, is dome-shaped and traditionally thatched or covered with leaves from the sugarcane. That's an established crop in Samoa. This was a job for the women, and it involved twisting the leaves and then fastening them with a thin strip of coconut leaf before fixing them to the roof in several layers. Now, the shape of the roof is important. You can see that the sides are quite steep, and that's done so that the rain falls straight to the ground without moisture going through the leaves and causing leaks or dampness inside the house. Then you'll notice how high the top of the roof is. This is a way of allowing heat to rise on sunny days and go through the thatching, thereby cooling the house. So, how does the house stay upright? Well, there are a number of evenly spaced posts inside. They encircle the interior of the building and go up to the roof and support the beams there. They're also buried, usually about 1.5 meters in the ground to keep them firm. These posts are produced using local timber from the surrounding forests. They're cut by men from the family or village, and the number varies depending on the size and importance of the house. Now, these posts were a very significant part of Samoan culture and did much more than hold up the roof. When there were meetings, people sat with their back to certain posts, depending on their status in society. So there were posts for chiefs, according to their status, and posts for speakers, and so on. And ordinary people sat around the side on mats. The last area I want to look at today is the attachment of the beams and posts, what you call fixing the construction. Traditionally, no nails or screws were used anywhere in such a building. Instead, coconut fibres were braided into rope to fix the beams and posts together. The old people of the village usually made and plaited the rope. This was a lengthy process. An ordinary house used about 40,000 feet of this rope. And as you can see in this picture, the rope was pulled very tightly and wound round the beams and posts in a complex pattern. And in fact, the process of tying it to the beams so that it was tight and strong enough to keep them together is one of the great architectural achievements of Polynesia.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.